Good evening, my YouTube buddies. It's Bob here. I got some funky brass music playing. Nobody here yet, but I'm sure you're all going to join me shortly. We had a good turnout last week, and let's see what this week will bring. To be fair, there should be a few of you coming on. So let's hit that funky music, So what's going to happen this evening, I wonder. I've got quite a few ideas to play around with, different styles of, I've been reading up on different styles of argument within the Pyrrhonistic tradition. So I might talk about that later on. And I've actually linked it to the Myers-Briggs test that we were talking about last week or the week before. So hey, who knows? That should be interesting. Let's get rid of the music and let's see your comments, guys. Again, not sure obviously what's going to happen with the old delay. Hiya Kaleem, hiya Murray, thanks for joining us. Rip roaring evening of entertainment, and Kerr says he can't find the link to YouTube, which is bizarre because all you've got to do, Kerr, is go on my channel, which you do every week. So hey, why not I do that now while we're having this conversation? I don't know why people have so much trouble getting online. I thought in this day and age people were like really switched on for this stuff. Right, okay, on you go. The prior peach eye. That's all you got to put in, and that's where you get. So you two got my link. Well, there's 4 or 5 of you on now. Be interesting to know who's sort of lurking in the background. Please leave your comments below, just to say, even if it's just to say hi, that'll be cool. And yeah, Kate, you should obviously he should have a link. I'll tell him that. Check your emails, mate. Check your emails. I've been looking at some of these. Sorry, Cap, Justin. It appears some people are having trouble finding the link. He was in the wrong channel. He was in the HIGHERWAY code channel, which is fine, but it's in the prior peach eye. I mean, I could put the HIGHERWAY code stuff on, but there you go. Maybe that's what I should have done. But anyway, people know that the prior peach eye, the HIGHERWAY code, and the HIGHERWAY podcast are all inextricably linked. Hey, Boyan. Wow. Good to see you, Boyan. I hope you're well, mate. It's been a while since we've discussed NLP back in the days, back in the guild. There's been all sorts of things happening, mate. Philosophically and practically, same thing, really. So yeah, it'd be interesting to get comments. So we've started, we've been in 3 minutes. We've got 6 people on, which is pretty good. Normally takes a little bit longer than that. And let's see if we can get a dizzy heights of 12, I think it was 13 people, maybe 12 or 13 people. So if we're having a delay, and Craig Galvin's on. Hiya Craig, thumbs up to Craig. I am going to do another podcast with you soon, mate. I've just got to organise a date. And also doing another podcast with Justin. But your other one's not live yet, obviously, because you're in a queue, mate. There's about 7 or 8 podcasts I've got to upload. And the podcast, just incidentally, hiya Paul, how are you doing? There's Paul Robinson, my brother-in-law there. The podcasts come out every Tuesday and every Friday. And they're going to vary. There are quite a lot of martial artists there, but there's some interesting stories coming out of these martial artists. Who's the dame on the t-shirt? No, it's not a dame, mate. You'll find out that is a really cool drawing of Siddhartha Gautama, otherwise known as the Buddha, drawn by, oh God, I've forgotten his name. He does a lot of animal artwork, like inks and stuff, and he did Nietzsche, Tesla and the Buddha. obviously he knew where his priorities lie, and I like the fact that he's scruffy in it, because that's probably what he would have looked like anyway back in the day. He was a Scythian, not an Indian, so he would have had Caucasian features, and being a foreigner, of course, in India at the time. And that information's only just coming out recently. Only come out recently, this idea that the Buddha was in fact not Indian at all. And in fact he came from a family of sun worshippers, the Shakyan clan. Pretty heavily influenced by Zoroastrianism as well. And I always have a problem with that. I'll take a Tesla one. Well, you need to check him out, mate. If only I could remember the name of the guy. It's inside the t-shirt. Am I going to have to take the t-shirt? Oh, that's pretty gross. Taking the t-shirt off on YouTube just to find out the name. I'll get his name, Craig, and I'll send you his details. They're really quite one-off sort of t-shirts. I think he only did a run of about 100 of each character, but he may have done another one. His print, as it were, and he printed a limited amount off. I think the company that was doing them was called High Existence. I think that was the company that did them. A company called High Existence. Yeah, check that out, Craig. High Existence. So do we have a delay? We'll never know. We will know, because Murray will time it probably. Murray saw some of the t-shirts and they were on sale. So I'm guessing we've got about a 5 to 10 second delay, which is quite common. And the sound's okay, I guess, guys. So, nobody's given me any comments of what to talk about today. We've got 10 people on now. Be interesting to see who the others are. Even if you just drop me a text, I'm sure Tina's out there. And a few others lurking in the background. I have been reading more on Pyrrho again today, as well as actually spending quite a bit of time. I've made a small meditation short for YouTube, and I also, yes, a big delay. Okay, I don't see why that should be happening, because I set it up with an ultra slow latency, which is supposed to knock it down. Well, knock it down to about 4 or 5 seconds, which is what we had last week. So same settings. I don't know why there's a problem. Let's try something, shall we? Let's try something and see if this helps. I'm going to fart around with me Wi-Fi. If I go off, I'm going to go off. So let's hope. Maybe this has changed the delay. Who knows? We've got 9 people on now. Obviously, people are going to be dropping off if there's a massive delay. So hopefully the delay will have changed somewhat, slightly. Should be a little bit better now. I've again gone in and dropped the latency as low as I can drop it. So that's all about streaming and how many things you've got running at the same time. I've only got one thing running. Say something and I will answer. There you go. I've said something. And Paul said he lost me a minute ago. Oh, okay, Kaleem, here we go. Which is better, Muay Thai versus reality-based self-defense? Haha, the $1 million question. Well, I'll be perfectly honest. Muay Thai is for Muay Thai. It's a sport, okay? Whilst it might have some applications in the street, the whole mindset is different. It's a completely different thing. And some people might think because they can fight in the ring, they can also fight in the street. I think you'll find that's a misnomer. You know, that's not exactly true. It's more that it's true to say that you would think a Muay Thai fighter would be prepared to have a fight in the street, and it's probably true to say that there are some Thai boxers who can fight in the street as well. A perfect example is somebody who's on here at the moment, Justin, who both worked the doors for many, many years, a long time. We'll hear about that in his podcast. But also was a British and European champion in Muay Thai. But that's pretty rare, as I think Justin will agree. And I dare say Justin will come up with some comments. Reality-based self-defense, but there's another thing as well. It depends on who's teaching and how it's being taught. because a lot of the reality-based self-defense systems probably, and I don't say all because I don't want to generalize, that quite a lot of them will adhere to some sort of syllabus and some sort of membership package, which implies that it's important to keep regular money coming in, which means you have to continually update your syllabus. My views of self-protection are pretty simple. You deal with the mind first. The physical stuff is the least of your worries. Building awareness, building strong intention, being able to essentially control your mental state so that should you end up in a physical situation, you can at least deal with it psychologically. If it then gets out of hand and the guy attacks you, then yes, of course, you do need possibly one or two techniques to get you out of trouble quickly. But this idea, which is continually being promoted, that you're going to get grabbed from behind, somebody grabs your wrist, somebody holds a knife in front of you, is so far fetched from reality as to be laughable. But people still buy into it because people who've not worked in the business of martial arts and violence, well, they don't know any better. So, a long answer to a short question. So sorry, there's a delay in the way the replies are coming through. So hopefully that's answered your question. I think you knew that anyway, Kaleem, because you have trained with me, and I keep my self-protection training very, very simple as I possibly can. And if you remember, Kaleem, I think the thing I did on Nuneaton, it was over six months, one Sunday a month. I actually cancelled the last two and give people their money back because I couldn't honestly extend it any further than 4 sessions. Not honestly anyway. I felt that anything I was going to add would be padding, and I didn't want to do that. But of course, you know, the psychological aspect of it is the most important part, and of course the largest part of it, and I believe 99% of it, is going to be that awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the environment, and that you can easily practice, obviously, with things like commentary walking. I'm not sure, obviously, who's on in the background at the moment, but commentary walking is something I teach to all of my students. Just as a recap, and I just want to pop down to the thing, and I'll come back to the commentary walk in a second. Justin's just added, muay does transfer to the street quite well, clinching elbows, but I've seen some very good Thai boxers completely fall apart in the street because there's no rules to protect them. So there's an answer from somebody who was a Thai boxer but also worked the doors and was involved in violence on the streets in the valleys in South Wales. A good friend of mine and chief instructor for the Pride PHI camp in Wales. So coming back to the commentary walk, and so just a quick recap. When you do your advanced driving test, you do a thing called commentary driving, which is where you sit in the car with the driver. You've already passed your normal test, and you feed information to that examiner. For example, 100 metres ahead of me, there's a zebra crossing, there's children at the zebra crossing. To the left of me, there's a lot of people trying to cross the road, and there's a bus pulling out. To my right, there's a truck reversing onto the street and reversing in towards a motorcycle who's overtaken and coming into my path. Behind me, 100 yards I've got more or less clear, it's safe to stop. 50 yards in front of me, 30 yards, and so on. So what you're doing is explaining to the examiner exactly what's going on to the front of the car, to the rear of the car, to the left and right, and also what decisions you're making within the vehicle. It's quite difficult. My point is, if you can do that at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour in a car, it should be even easier to do that type of thing walking. Hence the term commentary walking. Okay, you're walking along, running an internal commentary in your head about what's going on in front of you, in the distance, the mid-distance, close, the same behind, the same to the left and right. Taking into account your mental state as well and how your thoughts are affecting your perceptions going on. Okay, that's it really in a nutshell, commentary walking. And you practice that for a few weeks. Obviously, it takes conscious effort, and eventually what happens, a bit like driving a car or riding a bike, it becomes an unconscious act, so that it's constantly running on in the background. Now what I don't expect people to do is to spend that time looking for problems. That's not what you're doing. All you're doing is having an open an open sense of awareness of what's going on, mindful of everything going on in the environment, and of course the people in the environment and yourself and how you figure in it. And of course your mental state is a part of that as well. Remember, I think it's something I was going to write down actually about thoughts. Actually, I made a couple of notes. I had this idea that if you stop believing in thoughts, suspend your beliefs, which is a Pyrrhonist technique. Suspend your beliefs, suspend your judgment about your thoughts. Things would be, you'd have a much nicer, sort of tranquil place to be, because generally speaking, it's thoughts that cause most of the problems, because we make assumptions. So when you're walking down the street in your state of awareness and you see somebody, don't jump to conclusions, okay? That your belief is they're going to attack you. That might not be the case. It might be the case, but until they start approaching you physically, then you're not going to know, okay? So, and on a daily basis, I think stop believing your thoughts is a good maxim. In fact, we can add that to the maxims of Pyrrhonism. Pyrrhonists use maxims in order to help them suspend judgment. And I've talked about this loads of times, a thing called epoche. And I know for a fact Justin's bought one of the books I recommended, Pyrrho's Way, which has recently come out, written by Douglas C. Bates. A fantastic bit of stuff. And as I say, after 50 years of meditation and NLP and other practices, yoga and stuff, this just hits the nail on the head for me anyway. And I can only speak for myself because that's my perception. But the day I started suspending judgment and dropping all of my belief systems, literally all of them, there's a certain level of tranquility now. What the Japanese would call a kensho or satori, the Indians would call it nibbana, nirvana, extinguishing desires, as they call it in Buddhism, suspending judgment, as they say in Pyrrhonism. Yeah, Craig has just made a nice point which adds to it, which is be present in whatever environment you're in. And the old Buddhists had a word for it. They said to be intimate with all things. I remember somebody told me that and I didn't quite know what they meant. I thought they meant you go around touching people. Then you get into trouble, of course. Hitting, that is. Not touching, maybe a different word. But no, to become intimate with all things. And when you have that intimacy, that interaction with them, you realise that you're as much a part of the environment as everything else, in dependency. There's a thing in Buddhism called dependent origination. I'm not even going to go into that today because that's not what I wanted to talk about. I'm coming back to the comments now. Bruce Lee talks a lot about the same idea, being present in an actual fight. What is the link between just practicing presence and having a lot of experience in fights? I think the two are mutually interdependent, to be honest. The more fights you've had, the more relaxed you are in the fights, the less likely you are to have thoughts impinging. Thoughts such as, shit, this is dangerous. Oh my God, he's got a knife. Or look at the size of him. Because once you're experienced in a fighting situation, those thoughts never come back into your head. Particularly relevant for Thai boxers. And Justin might have something to add on this because he is an experienced Thai boxer with over 28, 30 fights under his belt. And a lot of them wins. But I know from my foray into competing, which was scant compared to my fighters, I was never a champion or anything like that. I just enjoyed sparring. The more fights you had, the more relaxed you were when you went into a fight, which meant you were better able to control what was going on in the fight. In fact, you got to a point where you were able to score each round yourself. And that's the ideal. And that's when you're totally in the moment, totally present. Those fighters are fighting, if you like, in a Zen state. And you watch the Thais doing it, who've had over hundreds of fights. There's a flow to it. There's no big deal. There's certainly no fear. There's no nerves. It's a job. And they do it in a matter-of-fact way. And they're present in the moment. And it's a good question. I mean, I don't think Bruce Lee was the first person to actually talk about this idea, about being present in a fight. I think if you look at the works of Daniel McBain back in the 1700s, before that, George Silver, Lonergan, all of the famous Western fencers and fighters, they would tell you the same thing. that through repetition and practice and having lots of duels and fights, you have this state where you're in the moment. And I'm going to bring it back to the Greeks, and I've mentioned this before, because the term that Pyrrhonists give to a state of tranquility is called Ataraxia. And Ataraxia, directly translated, is a word picked up. It means tranquility, unperturbedness, being in the moment. Ataraxia was a term that Pyrrho stole from the soldiers on the battlefield when he was with Alexander the Great on his invasions across into India. And Ataraxia perfectly applies to soldiers being in the present moment, because a soldier cannot function at a high level if he's in a heightened state, i.e. terrified. Doesn't work. And obviously the more experience that soldier has, the more balanced and tranquil he'll be under a situation of stress. And this is how you handle stress, essentially. To not believe your thoughts, to suspend judgment on what's going on in your head. Because, there's an old saying in NLP, whatever you believe, you're right. So why not suspend belief? Drop beliefs one way or another, and you're in that perfect middle space between the two, where they're equally balanced. And again, the Greeks had a word for it, equivalence, where you look at one argument and with its opposing argument, and you find balance between them and realize that they're both equally pointless, if I can say that. But remember, this is just my view. You have to make your own mind up on these things. Never listen to what people tell you, never listen to dogma, because you get wrapped up in belief systems, and it's a slippery path. You just have to look at the world to realise that. And Justin's just reiterate what I've said there in the comments, which is, how relaxed you become in the ring, given full control of yourself, and by extension the situation you're in. So it's a really valid point. And it's funny that the term ataraxia comes from the battlefield and not from some mystical, dogmatic, belief system orientated mystical state. Okay, and that that brings me very nicely round to different ways to refute beliefs, if you like. Different styles that you can use to challenge the belief systems that you have. And I've been doing it for weeks now, weeks and weeks and weeks. And the Greeks recognised, particularly the Pyrrhonists recognised, and obviously Pyrrho didn't write this down, Timon did, and then Eusebius, and then of course Sextus, who put together the great book Outlines of Pyrrhonism, which of course I've always got on my shelf. It's, this book here, I'll show it again just in case any of you guys never seen it. Take your time with it. It takes some reading. I suggest before that book you probably read this new book that's just come out, Pyrrho's Way, because it's from the viewpoint of the modern world, if you like, Pyrrhonism as it's practiced now, by Douglas Bates, who has his own Facebook page called Pyrrhonism, and I recommend it. He's had the Facebook page about 5 years. But no, I've been working on a blog post for 50 Shades of Zen, which is going to be about the different styles of, the different styles of argument you can have in order to deal with the belief systems that you have. And Sextus recognised there was probably 3, but of course, don't be dogmatic about it. These are not truths, by the way. Okay, they're never truths or untruths. They just are something that from the evidence seem to work. And remember, in Pyrrhonism we look at evident and non-evident. These are the things. And non-evident things are usually beliefs. Okay, when something is non-evident, we have to make something up about it. Ideas of gods or God, or truths of any kind, or knowledge as it stands. Okay, and when you suspend that judgment, you don't make judgments either way. There's a sense of tranquility comes over you, which allows you to have an appropriate response. The same as in the ring, you have the appropriate response. But coming back to those styles, there was 3 styles. If I give you the Greek names, because they're pretty cool. You've got the aphoretic, the emphatic, and the zetetic. And the first one is a refutation style, where you practice argument, basically. Refutation is focused on developing arguments. I'm checking my notes here, guys, yeah? Developing arguments against non-evident propositions, the things I was just talking about, dogmas, you know. We know gravity exists because that's evident, so we can make a judgment on that. We can utilize it. We know what it does, but we're not sure actually how it works. It's just a theory. It's just an idea, and there's been many theories put towards it. So none of them are truths. Okay, those are non-evident propositions about gravity that we have. So we argue against them as a means to achieve epoche, which is suspending judgment. You know, if you fix yourself to one of those theories and it becomes a belief, then it ensnares you, and it leaves you closed really to any ideas that you have, which is why science sort of evolves, a sort of empiricism. Sort of Hume was a sort of a Pyrrhonist, sort of. He went so far, okay, and quite far. Bishop Berkeley was another one. These are people you can read about, you know, from the Renaissance onwards, really. And strange enough, Bishop Berkeley was a Christian, but he had a non-dogmatic approach to his faith. I don't know how that worked, but he had some interesting ideas anyway. So the refutation style fits in with the Myers-Briggs stuff we were talking about last week. I think it was Tina brought up Myers-Briggs, the system of working out personality types. And I was looking at that, and if you've ever done the Myers-Briggs test, the person that should use refutation style, you know, focusing on arguments against non-evident propositions, would be the thinking and judging types. So if you're a thinking and judging type of person, then refutation style is a really good way of achieving epoche. I mean, these are just little sound bites that I want to give you. I'm going to expand on them in my blog post and in future talks if people are interested. Then of course, secondly, you've got the suspension style, okay, which is emphatic. The Greeks call it emphatic. Suspension style focuses on, it's placed on going directly to epoche, which is sort of the way I do it. And I do it via the maxims, neither or, neither more. So I'll look at things and I'll go, well, is that either more than that in terms of weight, or they're equal because he said this and he said that and they're equally weighted. So I'm not arguing with myself, I'm just looking at the balance and then taking it straight and then just going, I'm going to suspend judgment. And I had the same thing about reincarnation and rebirth, this idea that exists in Buddhism. And that came a long time ago for me. I always had problems with believing in reincarnation because it was a belief system and I didn't think that fitted well. In fact, it doesn't fit well at all with early Buddhism. It was never mentioned in early Buddhism. It was much later that it was added through the Hindu accretions. And karma was another one, never really ever mentioned by the Buddha in the early stuff. It was added later, much, much later. So I sort of looked at karma, looked at the evidence. There was no evidence, so it was non-evident. So I literally just said, well, you know, there's nothing to support it. And I actually came to the conclusion, you know what? Either way, whether I believe it or not, I just don't know. So what's the point? And that's the sort of effective way of working, where you just suspend judgment and just go, yeah, I just don't know, and be totally honest with yourself. And it's, trust me, it was like a weight coming off my shoulders, which sounds a bit heavy, really. Okay. And then finally you've got what's called zygtechnic, which is the seeking style. Oh, sorry, the Myers-Briggs thing for the second style, the suspension style. The Myers-Briggs thing I worked out, it was the feeling and perceiving types. So if you're a feeling and perceiving type, which I guess I sort of am, it's the style I was using in order to suspend my judgment and drop the beliefs off, you know, as Dogen says, dropping off body and mind. Well, the Pyrrhonists just drop off the mind. The body's not a big problem. And then finally, you've got the seeking style, okay, which I was coming to the zygtechnic style. And that's placed on inquiry and investigation. So if you're on the Myers-Briggs scale as someone who's an intuitive and a perceiver, okay, one of those intuitive types, inquiry and investigation, and ongoing questioning and shifting your perspectives. I do a little bit of that as well, to be honest. Shifting perspective, reframing things, as we say in NLP, is a great method for not just coming to a conclusion. So it stops you coming to those conclusions that you feel are right, that you believe are right. So those are the three styles of I guess Pyrrhonist argument, if you want to call it that, to help you achieve Ataraxia. Aristotle, okay, Aristotle, who was around at the time of Pyrrho, okay, although not a Pyrrhonist, was heavily influenced by Pyrrho. I believe Aristotle said it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. I had to write this down, guys, so that's why I'm looking down here. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So what's he saying there? Observe the thought, let it go. Because thoughts are the main cause of problems with people, particularly when they're tied up with dogmas. Because people are constantly looking for something, aren't they? They're on this search for something. And I think the realization should come that there isn't anything, they're just what their appearances, as Pyrrho called it. There just is what there is. You know, just because you've achieved ataraxia or nirvana doesn't mean you don't feel pain. That's evident. These are things that you don't get old. You decay, you die, you get disease. These are normal things. Okay? And there's really great ways of helping you deal with pain, which are evident because I've used them on myself. You know, focusing on pain, for example, and observing it as just a sensation. Now, that's not a dogma. That's a useful proposition that I'll use, presupposition that I will use to deal with the day-to-day things that happen to us in the real world. A lot of people spend most of their time, as we've talked about, not being in the real world. They're either far off in the future or way back in the past. And being in that present moment is absolutely vital. And yeah, it's quite interesting to share the journey with some of you guys, particularly on the meditation group on a Tuesday night, because it's good to bounce things off people. And again, as I say, you know, everything I'm saying you want to suspend judgment on, because this is just my perception of what's going on here in what I can see, hear, feel, smell, taste, you know, my five senses. And being in a present moment is the only way to really focus on that present moment. Just going to have a look down the comments now and just see if anybody's put anything else on. And Justin just added, in addition, it's surprising how desensitized, interesting use of the word, you become to the violence you encounter on the doors. Glass, bottle, edge weapons attack, even a baseball bat once. Yeah, I remember that one. Being in a relaxed state keeps you in the present moment. You know, most human beings, when they haven't been in those situations, find it really difficult to handle it. And it is, you keep control because you don't let your thoughts run riot and your intent stays strong. It's a thing I wrote about today on the blog post about, the question was asked about aggression or assertiveness. And I think assertiveness is the key, not being aggressive. And assertiveness is a mental state and can be tangible. Don't just believe me. You know, people will tell you they felt it. Speak to Justin. That's pretty evident as well. And science has sort of shown that, you know, hormones leave the body and people pick up on it. We smell fear, for example. It's an appearance. It's one of the senses. And Kaleem said, any NLP seminars coming up soon? Well, I don't do formal NLP seminars as such anymore, Kaleem. But I do sort of one-to-one coaching with people to get them up to that level. And I'm working with a guy at the moment online, because that's the way we're working at the moment. And he lives over the other side of the country. So he's been doing one-on-ones with me. So if people are interested in exploring NLP and taking it further, because you know me, I don't just leave it at an NLP level. The basics are interesting and fascinating, but I don't know whether Craig's still on, but Craig trained with me with NLP, and I knew when I watched Craig that he was going to, follow, I guess, the presupposition that Bandler always talks about, and that is curiosity. That's the attitude you should have with everything. An attitude of curiosity that leaves behind a trail of techniques is what Richard Bandler called it. And interestingly enough, Bandler also said beliefs become the chains of the free. And he said that a long time ago, but he never expanded on it. And I think because he'd probably read into Pyrrho, I get the feeling, but I think he felt that would have put him outside the realms of commercialism, because it's taking it much deeper than most people want to go. NLP was the quick fix thing that helps people get on with their lives on a day-to-day basis. Very powerful, a really powerful tool, and in the right hands with someone who genuinely has an interest in that individual and is curious about how they created their map of the world and what it is that motivates and makes them move forward into action. It's a powerful tool, but it is just that. It's a tool, it is a tool. And Craig's still here, so you probably heard all of that, Craig. Bigging you up, mate. Bigging you up. Craig, of course, if you listen to the podcast, if you've not heard it, you should have a listen to it. We're going to do a second one with Craig and go further into the memory techniques that he uses. I nearly said tricks because they're not tricks. People have contacted Craig to sort of ask him what the trick is, but there is no trick. It's just lots of hard work. Craig says techniques in and of themselves are not what do the work. Absolutely. They're more a way of starting to understand how someone thinks, behaves and reacts. They can be used individually. Absolutely. This is the problem people get. They go on NLP courses and they go, I've got this technique, this tool, this, I use this. That's not how NLP works. Absolutely in no shape or form. It's far more subtle than that. And it's actually all about building rapport. It's more about gaining the trust of the individual. And I've found that if you gain the trust of an individual, you can help them change anything, because they'll believe. Remember what I said about beliefs being strong? Believe that what you're saying is true. Okay? What I find myself doing now is taking people down that road. I've done this with one of my clients, using the techniques and the tools of NLP to get them to change their beliefs to a more useful belief, so they had a better outcome, and then getting rid of that as well. And I was really curious about how it would work, and it did it. I was talking to the chap about it, and I don't know whether he's on here tonight lurking in the background, but I think he's sort of doing it with everything now. He's suspending judgment on a number of different things, and he's finding that he's just getting on with his life, and he's having appropriate responses to situations by being intimate with the environment. Put all those keywords together. And Craig's a very experienced therapist, by the way, guys, so whatever comments he's putting up, have a look at them, but you don't have to believe them, dear Craig. So most issues people come across with their belief that stops them from moving forward are not always their own. Absolutely. The beliefs belong to other people. And I think that's I was going to say true of all beliefs, but that would be a generalization. And we know about generalizations, because once you start generalizing things, it causes all sorts of problems. Generalizations tend to create beliefs. We generalize the idea that a certain group of people are bad, therefore they are bad, and we see them as bad. And we think that they are bad. And those thoughts will buzz around in your head, and you start to believe they're true. And once that happens, you need to suspend that belief. Question everything. Yeah. I mean, we've said this time and time again, haven't we? Be curious. Question it. Don't accept. In fact, even the Buddha said that 2,500 years ago, and yet people went off and formed a religion based on what he was saying, which is absurd. And everybody knows my interest in early Buddhism, and I'm not slavishly working away with different academic treatises, getting the nitty gritty on the historical aspects of Siddhartha Gautama. That's why I call him Siddhartha, Sid, not Buddha. Boyan, yeah, that's a necessary part of the mind realignment process. These are always some funny words coming out. Ego stabilization. Yeah. And this is the other thing about labels. You've got to be careful with labels, haven't you? Because people pick up on these words and start to give them some sort of power. And Craig's probably seen it. I've certainly seen it, where people come in with the labels and they have absolute belief in these labels. My first job is to dispel them of this myth that these labels are real, because they're just words. They're just words. That's all. And words don't have any inherent reality to them, except what they mean to that person. Obviously, we have to use words in order to communicate ideas, and this is why it's difficult communicating, and why it's easier just to simply believe things. This is why people take the option. It's far harder being curious. It's much tougher thinking about things in a measured, judgmental way, and then suspending those judgments and beliefs. And people won't do that. It's easier just to jump on the bandwagon. And this is why I guess the world is in the state it's always been in, because people essentially are very lazy and leave it to other people to do the thinking for them. But when people really think and come out with really good ideas, they tend to shoot them down because they don't fit in with their fixed model of the world. That's what dogma is, having fixed views. Not only power, they embrace them and believe it is who they are. Yeah, exactly. This idea of building up a sense of self, that the self is as impermanent as any other aspect of the universe. Oh, is that just a belief? Is impermanent impermanent? I've been playing around with that one. But this idea of a sense of a solid fixed self is useful to a certain degree, but becomes useless when people fix on it and think it is actually real. Because they come in for a shock, because when they're challenged, the world falls apart. And I think certainly Craig and Boyan, I'm sure he sees clients as well, will come across this with people all the time. They've been living labels essentially, and your job is to essentially get them to be in the moment, to realize that this sense of self is contingent. It is dependent on other things. My existence is dependent on other things. I think some of you guys will remember on the meditation group, I said, even when you meditate alone, you're not, are you? Because you're sitting on a cushion that somebody made, in a building that somebody constructed, taking advantage of the services, the warmth, the heat that other people provided. So when you're meditating, you're never actually alone in the world, although you might feel like that. And that's I think Stephen Batchelor wrote a book called Alone with Others when he was having his existential crisis. And I've got that book. Of course I've got that book. Alone with Others, yeah. One of Stephen Batchelor's really early books. Very, very good book. He's moved on since then. He's the author of Buddhism Without Beliefs. So he slightly hinted a few years ago about his search about dispelling beliefs. And Stephen Batchelor is what we call a secular Buddhist. He trained as a Buddhist monk in a couple of different traditions. The Tibetan tradition, and which is steeped in ritual, and the Zen tradition in Korea, which is the complete opposite. And then dropped away all of those things, and is now what we call a secular Buddhist. So he's taken it so far, and I was heavily influenced by his stuff many years ago. It's those type of books you read and you go, yeah, I knew that, but he's put it in words for me. You have a bit of a revelation when you read it and you realise, yeah, I sort of knew that, but now that he's put it together for me in a cohesive argument, it makes sense. And yeah, and then you feel you're not alone in the world because there's a kindred spirit out there, and we're, you know, connected to, as it were, through the power of words, strangely enough. And words are very powerful things, as Craig, who's a hypnotherapist, will agree. You know, the words we use with people, the discussions we have with people, you have to be careful. You've got to be very careful about how and what you say to people. You know, it will affect them because words do have power. In fact, there's a Tibetan tradition where, you know, the mantra tradition in India and particularly in Tibet was taken to the furthest extreme, but it became a dogma. You know, it became a real ritual. But they were heading in the right direction by saying that, you know, words had power. And it's amazing, isn't it? Because when you read a book, you get an insight into the person who wrote it, and they're taking you somewhere. You know, this is the powerful thing about books, and why I love books. You know, you can literally be transported to other planes, other levels, other states, if you like. Okay, that's how powerful words and thoughts are. When you combine the two with an effective hypnotherapist, you can instigate change really quickly. And it doesn't even have to be deep trance, because everybody's in a trance, as we've alluded to tonight. You know, most people aren't in the present. You know, Bandler said the hardest thing is getting people out of the trance. That was his exact words. And at the time I thought, you know, he's got it. Yeah, that's right. 100%, Craig says, yes, words have more power than one may believe, used for either good or bad, or even by accident. Be mindful. Spot on, Craig. Yeah, it would be nice to have somebody on here to argue with, though. I mean, it's nice to pat each other on the back and go, buddy, but the whole purpose of these things is to challenge each other, isn't it? And I know Craig would challenge me, and I would challenge him as well, and Boyan would be the same, because I've had some interesting conversations back in the day when Boyan was a student of mine doing Thai boxing, strangely enough. But we'd spend more time talking about, I think, NLP, and not enough time, I don't think, because you obviously left university shortly after we started getting into very deep conversation about things, and it would be nice to carry it on. But, you know, these things happen. So, we have 8 wonderful people on here. I've been talking now for 47 minutes and had nothing to eat. You've probably been hearing my dog shaking outside. He's got a collar on him, makes a hell of a noise. Yeah, it's been really good tonight. I've felt we've kept it on track, and all been moving in the same direction. And I'm surprised Kay hasn't mentioned anything tonight other than I'm on. I managed to get on. So yeah, 48 minutes in, and I've been doing a lot of talking. Hopefully, it's been of interest, guys. But that book I'm putting together, I'm still stuck at chapter 4 at the moment, because the more I write, the more I start to change ideas about what should be written. And like the post I wrote today, I really wanted to go back and change it after I saw it. But that's fine, because it gives people a foundation at which to come in at. And I think that's vital, you know. And having a strong foundation is pretty important. That applies to self-protection, that applies to Thai boxing, and that applies to meditation, and to argument as well. Because as I've said to you guys, some of you guys anyway, I find that my meditation is no longer meditation in the traditional sense now. Very rarely that I sit and just focus on the breath. I find that the state of ataraxia and hypoke comes very quickly when I sit, using some Pyrrhonist techniques, using the maxims as I see, that's where I suspend judgment. Okay, K Van Dam, that's because my internet was glitching, Bob. Ha ha ha. I just caught parts. Well, I hope you caught the parts that really feel nice. But it is obviously it's going to be kept on YouTube, so you can always go back and have a listen to it. I never have done, because I don't like listening to myself particularly. Even though you would think the amount of talking I do. Yeah, I like talking. I just don't like listening to myself. Um, well, Bob, if you were near me, I would have treated you to a chicken kebab. Yeah, that would have been interesting. Um, what's the book that has the most impact on you, where it made you really explore you to do it? Oh, okay. That, Craig, that is simple. I thought I knew which book those were. Some of them were Bandler's books. They've gone. Some of them were Ericksons books. Gone. Although they're still important books to me. Stephen Batchelor, I've moved on. Seriously, mate. Um, and some of the guys on here will probably be laughing. Sad we can't hear you. Um, this, mate, I'm sorry, Greek philosophy. And another book that is literally a book I've been carrying around with me since I bought it weeks and weeks and weeks ago. And I had it completely shifted the way I see things. I had a paradigm shift, if you like. Um, uh, yeah, incredible. At an academic level, and I say this cautiously, at an academic level, I can't say how much I enjoyed that. Don't be put off by the title, Craig. It's not really about Buddhism. It's about Greek philosophy. It's about Pyrrho's encounter with the early Buddhism in Central Asia. The guy's an academic. The first 4 chapters are very academic, but I know you like that stuff, and the rest sort of pull it together. It's a really nice book. And there is one other book which I don't have up here because I've got it downstairs, and it's a book. In fact, I'm going to put it in the comments thing so you can see. This is the author, Kuzminski, and the book is called it's that. You see there's a trend here, Craig. I'd been interested in Pyrrhonism many years ago, and sort of visited Greek sort of philosophy now and again, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, the Stoics, stuff like that, but didn't find them. They didn't do anything in my head. They seemed wrapped up with dogmas and rituals. I'm trying to find this idea of trying to find the truth, and I've never that didn't sit well with me, because I don't believe there is. I'm saying don't believe. Maybe I should challenge that, and there I go. There either is or there isn't a truth. That's not what's important. It's about living here now. I think, you've got this limited period of time on the planet, and it's about what's evident and living in the moment. The old Zen saying, which I know some of you have heard me say before, and you've probably read it. Before practicing meditation, a mountain was just a mountain, a tree was a tree, a river was just a river. Whilst practicing meditation and Zen, a river was more than a mountain, a river was more than a river, a mountain was more than a mountain, a tree was more than a tree. Once you finish and conclude your practice, you come to the realization that actually the mountain was just a mountain, the river was just a river. It just is as it is. It is as it was. It just is. And yeah, so yeah, day by day, and that's a proclivity, isn't it? It's something that's useful at the time, and then you move on. It's we have them in NLP. They call them presuppositions. Presuppositions are I guess sort of beliefs, useful beliefs. Like failure. There is no failure, just feedback. And if it's useful at the time on a day-to-day basis, that's cool. If the evidence suggests that it's working, that's cool. When it doesn't, don't use it. And at the end of the day, these are just words, aren't they? It's what you choose to put into these words, what weight you give to them, I guess. So poor Justin evidently dropped out as well at some point. So people are having a problem with the old internet. Well, coming up to the last sort of 5 minutes of this evening, guys. I hope you enjoyed the drivel that I've come out with. And, you know, I just go back to my own maxim that I know nothing, which keeps me curious. So, you know, hopefully you'll join me on one of my forays on Sunday. I'm doing that online meditation seminar. If you know anybody or if you would like to come on it, it'd be great to have people on board. If you want to know how to apply, then you need to check out my blog. I think that's right. Or actually, if you look at the links that will be at the bottom in the description box here. So when this is loaded up, sort of in 10 minutes after I close it, I'm going to go to the description box and I'm going to put all the links, and you'll find the link to the meditation seminar there. It's more than just a meditation seminar, trust me. And it's going to be, if any of you guys did the previous meditation seminar, it really is taking it further. I'm taking you deeper down the rabbit hole. Oh, and of course, Kay's got his broadsword tomorrow. I knew it was only a matter of time when Kay would mention swords. And tomorrow evening, we will be doing broadsword, Kay. I do promise you. Even if there's a delay on the link. If there are no other questions, guys, you know, that's great. I've just noticed Craig's comment about his book was Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah, by Viktor Frankl. I might have a look at that as well. I think I have explored that book a while back. Certainly Viktor Frankl, I know the name. You know, yeah. And of course Korzybski's book, Science and Sanity. But I've sort of moved on from it. And that sounds a bit weird because Korzybski's book is tremendous, but it's like a doorstop. And I lent it out, never got it back. Somebody's propping a car up with it somewhere. All right, Justin, yeah, Justin signed us up. I saw that, yeah. Still hasn't had a confirmation email though. Oh, okay. That should have come through straight away. When you sign up, you get the confirmation, and then she should have had that if she signed up. I'll chase that up anyway. I'll chase that up for you, mate. It should come automatically on Get Response. Oh, and I've had a thank you from Stuart Hill on LinkedIn. He liked my post. That was quite nice when people like things. Yeah, you guys, when this is over, you know, when all of the YouTube things finish tonight, and if you have a look at any of my podcasts or any of my posts, I'd be really grateful. And it only takes a minute or two just to put a comment on, because it helps get it out there more. It bumps it up the list, you know. And you know, I mean, it's not monetized, so I'm not going to make any money out of it or anything. But it's just nice to get out there more, to get the message out there. And then maybe I do pick up some business at some point in the future. Who knows? You know, I'm sure I'm going to get. I've had some weird people coming on my Facebook page from the US saying that what I was writing was perplexing, and that there is a truth in the universe, and it's called the attraction. And I'm like, oh no, okay. And I don't end any dialogue with people who do that, and I don't think it's worth it. It just takes me out of my state of ataraxia. So, guys, literally 1 minute on the clock. I'll say my goodbyes, and check the spam for the email. Yeah, I'm gonna post the links when I've closed this live stream. But again, you know, thanks for coming along and listening to my nonsense. Let's see what we can talk about next week. I'll try and keep it away from the topic of martial arts and Pyrrhon, unless of course that's what you want me to talk about. Failing that, I will come up with a topic, probably something off the wall this time. Who knows? Maybe it'll be football, or boxing, or fishing, or motorbikes. You know, building motorbikes. That's something I love. You know, mechanics. Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Pirsig. That's a good book. It's all about Greek philosophy. Very little to do with motorcycle maintenance. Very famous book. How about drawing? Well, online, doing drawings. I can draw. I haven't got any drawings here. I don't know how we're going to do that, Paul. But you mean the technique of drawing? Or drawing water? Or drawing a tooth? Or drawing out ideas? You see, these are words. This is the problem, the ambiguity of language. So anyway, yeah. Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Kaleem. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Boy. And it's really good to see you on here, mate. Keep in touch. Thanks to Kay. Thanks to Murray. Thanks to anybody else who hovered in the background and then dropped out and then dropped back in. Nothing I can do about your internet connection, I'm afraid. Best thing to do is plug it direct into the Ethernet via your computer. That's what I've had to do. And hopefully the delay wasn't too long. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for spending an evening with me. It's always emotional. So I'm closing the meeting down now, guys. All right, thank you. Good night.